Okay, thank you so much to everyone for coming. I see all my good friends here. My wish is it was to celebrate a more joyous kind of occasion, but it is meaningful to me. It is meaningful to my family, and it's certainly an honor to my father that everyone's come tonight to show him honor and to maybe hear some lessons from his life and maybe to incorporate them into our own lives. I know for myself, so much of what I've gained in my life has been through the lessons that I've learned from watching my father, from hearing him speak, from going through life as a student of my father. So hopefully so many of the lessons that I've learned that sometimes we try to share, it's really so much of a tribute to the lessons that my father taught us. Just to introduce his life really doesn't start in 1942, which was the year that he was born. You know, none of our stories really begin from the day that we're born. Our story really goes all the way back to the creation of the world. Hashem created all of humanity for a purpose. And throughout all the different generations, we're all trying to fulfill the legacy of humanity that Hashem created us for the purpose of trying to learn and understand what the world is about, to try to serve Hashem and to try to do the best that we can to perfect our neshamas so that when we finish this part of our story and we open the next part of our story where we're upstairs in heaven closer to Hashem, we've done our part in order to accomplish our goals as much as we can. And then we could celebrate with that closeness to Hashem that is the purpose of our creation. So my father right now looking down from heaven certainly lived his life in a way that he fulfilled his purpose in such a very special kind of way, in a way that it was an inspiration and a lesson to everyone around him in such a significant manner. And maybe just by discussing many of the different experiences that he had in life, we will be able to be inspired and to learn and to try to follow in many of those ways as much as we can. Just to begin with his path to Torah Judaism. My dad didn't grow up in a family that was so educated and inspired to really be following the letter of the law of the Torah. You know, his family had come over in the late 1800s, and as most of the Jews who came from Europe in the late 1800s, it didn't take long before their families started to integrate into secular society. And most of the families, really before long, the concept of a true dedication to Torah observance was very, very foreign. And my father's neighbors and friends, the people who he associated with, Torah Judaism wasn't necessarily something that was a big part of the culture that he was coming from. He did have a couple grandparents, you know, who basically only spoke Yiddish, you know, who really dedicated their lives to reading Tehillim all day. And to some extent, you know, they were role models for him, growing up with a recognition that they were doing the best that they can in order to maintain their Torah observance to the best of their abilities. But many people at that stage, they weren't really able to integrate, even with their own families to a large extent. They came to Mars, you know, they came from Europe, they landed on the shores of the United States. They didn't speak the language. My father spoke about his great-grandfather, my namesake, Aryeh Klein, that he was an older man, he was a Melamed, he used to teach Torah, but he felt always lost on the shores of the United States. And most of the family over time, they went in the direction that most American families were going in. They were distancing themselves further and further from Torah Judaism. My grandfather himself, you know, he grew up not so educated. He didn't go to yeshiva. He didn't really understand so much about Torah Judaism, but he had a very strong dedication to emunah in Hashem, to belief in Hashem. A lot of the people in his social circles started to deny, you know, Hashem's involvement in our lives. And he fought strongly in order to keep his emunah, keep his faith in Hashem. He was a real mensch. He was the kind of person who represented so many of the values of the Torah, even though the actual laws of the Torah were not so familiar to him. So my father grew up in this kind of environment. He did go to Hebrew school to some extent, but he really wanted to go to yeshiva. Growing up, there was something within him that was telling him that I'm missing something that was really important. He spoke to his parents about it. He said, you know what? I'm getting a little bit of an education. I'm learning a little bit about what Torah Judaism is, but I recognize and I understand that this is not really what it was about. It actually didn't really work out for him, and he didn't end up going to yeshiva as a kid. But that drive for emes, that drive for truth, was something that really was always a motivation within him. He always had that intuition and that understanding that following the ways of Hashem included much more than that which he was exposed to. He says over that he remembers going to shul, and he would go to shul with his dad from time to time. And he remembers the old Hertz Chumash. It was written, it had the Hebrew, it had the English. And he remembers reading while he was in shul. He was a pretty intelligent person, even as a young child. And even as a kid, he would read the Hertz Chumash, and he would read all about these laws that he was supposed to be doing. And he said to himself, you know what? There's no one who I really know who is keeping these laws. And there's something wrong with the story. There's something that I'm not really understanding properly. That I'm reading the Torah, especially the Haftorahs. He said he would read the Haftorahs. It talks about the Nevi'im, where the Nevi'im were calling out to the Jewish people at the time and saying, hey, this is not okay. We really need to be following the ways of the Torah. And when we don't do that, Hashem is going to hold us accountable. But the people who he spoke to, he didn't really get any meaningful answers that really resonated within him, because he had this recognition that I know that there's more out there. I don't know what it is. I don't know where to go. I don't know where to turn, but I know that there's something out there that I'm missing. That's the world that I'm growing up in. We talk about the Torah. We talk about kosher. We don't really keep kosher. We sort of keep kosher. We sometimes keep kosher. And he had this inner desire. I really want the truth. I really want to know what this is all about. Is it really important to really be more dedicated to following the Torah and mitzvos? Is it not so important? And it's pretty confusing to a young child who's reading the book, and the book is saying one thing, but the people around him were not really following in those kinds of ways. And he didn't really know where to go. He used to tell over the story when he came to his bar mitzvah, and his bar mitzvah was something that he studied for. I don't think he read the entire Torah, but he prepared something for his bar mitzvah. And it was very meaningful to him. He's now going to demonstrate his relationship with Hashem. I'm not sure if he had the right words to describe what exactly was important to him, but there was something that he knew intuitively. This is my bar mitzvah. It's important. It's something that's meaningful. My commitment to Hashem is somewhat being demonstrated by my bar mitzvah. Yet he came to his bar mitzvah and it wasn't kosher. He said that it struck such a knife in his heart. He's like, I feel betrayed. I feel lost. I feel like there's such conflict in my life. Like, is this real? Is it not real? And he was searching, and he had this desire for truth that was burning within him from such a young age. Such an interesting thing to me. I grew up in a very different kind of reality where my father and mother were already very much Torah observant. And I had the merit of really having the clarity from a young age. But here he was someone who was looking for the clarity. He was looking to try to figure it all out. Like, what's the world about? We talk about these things and they're meaningful and they're so important, but like, I don't really know where to go with it. And it was very confusing to him. So these were the thoughts of a young child. It's hard for me to picture at 13 thinking about anything other than the Yankees and the Jets. But in his world, apparently, the meaningful relationship with Hashem was something that he was trying to discover. So in a way, when you think about it, this is the kind of thing, if a 13-year-old could have this inner burning desire for truth, if a 13-year-old could have this sense of desire for a dedication to really figuring it out, what is my responsibility in this world? It's something that certainly as adults, we want to try to commit ourselves to really understanding and figuring out, what is the world about? What does Hashem really want from me? So one of the things that he was really missing at this stage in life was he didn't really have the right kind of guidance, the right kind of role models, the right kind of leaders who were able to provide for him a true clarity about what the world was about. He had the desire, he had the interest. I'm sure he had interest in all kinds of other things that 13-year-olds are interested in as well, but there was a part of him that really was looking for guidance, was really looking for good role models, was looking for the leaders who could really show him what the world was about. So that's in a way, the first chapter of his search for the path toward Torah Judaism. It really began at this young age where in a way he had these role models of his grandparents, and some of his grandparents were really living this kind of life. They couldn't really teach it to him because they didn't really speak the same language. But he had this picture of, what it really means to be a Torah observant kind of person. And at the same time, he had this kind of feeling within him, I really want the truth. I really want to figure out what this is all about. Yet at the same time, there was such conflict in his life because he was getting such mixed messages about what the world was all about and what his true responsibilities were. So he went back and forth, throughout all the years, and through his years finishing elementary school, finishing high school. He was actually a pretty intelligent kind of person. He grew up in a house where his dad was a celebrated research doctor in the field of Beth Israel in Newark, as the Jaffes know very well. So the two of you were born in the same hospital that my grandfather worked for decades and decades and decades. And, he grew up, with this kind of background. His dad was a very celebrated doctor in his field. His list of accomplishments of what he accomplished, can go on and on and on. And this is the kind of mindset he had of what true success really looks like. When you grow up with the American dream, everyone coming from Europe, what do you want your kid to be? A doctor, a lawyer, especially a celebrated doctor, a celebrated lawyer. So he grew up with this kind of mindset that that's what true success really looks like. As a Jewish kid growing up in the mid-20th century, it was certainly something that would be celebrated. He was actually the first person ever admitted in early admissions into Harvard University. He was recruited as a 16-year-old kid in 11th grade. He had no idea that, such a university was going to recruit him. And this was sort of his path in life. His path was to be a celebrated intellectual in the secular world. So he went there. He was there for many years. And he took all the celebrated programs in Harvard. They gave him a special track where they wanted to make sure that he was developing his skills. But there was always something missing within his heart. He always recognized there's something that's not going right. He finished, he graduated, he had all the Latin words that they celebrated at the end of his graduation. And he was celebrated with honors. Here he is, he's an intellectual, he's on top of his field. He's someone who's graduated from Harvard after being accepted early admissions and after having a very successful career. And he was confused. He knew there was something missing in his life. He actually sold shoes for a year. He took off. He's like, this is not where it's at. Just following this path of intellectual interests and really even being successful. He had this burning desire within his heart. And he said, this is not really what the world is about. And he didn't really have such clarity to know where to turn. Like, where do I get more clarity? He didn't know that Torah Judaism was really where it was. So he took a year off. He's selling shoes, somewhere in Massachusetts near the college where he just graduated. So the people from Clark University, the top psychology university, they came and recruited him, and they found out, they read some of his papers that he wrote in college, and they recruited him to come join our university. Now, Clark University at the time, if you think about it, in the late 50s and the early 60s, the whole world of psychology was built on apicursus. It was built on throwing away God as fast as possible. The whole world of psychology, the whole world of science, it hasn't changed all that much these days, but especially in those days, it was even worse. It was the hotbed of throwing away God and claiming we know better than the old school. Yet this place in Clark University is actually where he became Torah observant, where he was looking, he was searching, and he was studying all of the great academic courses that he was taking. Yet at the same time, what he was really searching for was to find his creator, was to find, God who created the world, to find what his purpose was in life. And he recognized that my purpose in life is really to serve Hashem and to follow the ways of the Torah. He found there was a rabbi on campus, for all the great rabbis on campus who do such a great job, Rabbi Cutler and others. It was such an unbelievable thing. He had the right mentor at the right time. It can certainly change someone's life. Where as he was searching, he found a mentor who was able to help him on the path toward finding his creator and to finding what his true mission was supposed to be in his life. So when you think about it, what the kind of role that someone can play in someone else's life, where sometimes you could be there for someone who's searching. It may not look like he's searching because, he had the same bell bottoms and the same sideburns that everyone else had in those days. Yet at the same time, inside of him, his neshama was searching for truth. And when he found that proper mentor in his life, he was able to help guide him toward Torah Judaism. So as he graduated Clark with honors, now he wanted to go ahead in his academic career. He found a job in Beloit College in Wisconsin. He moved to a place called Rockford, Illinois, which was not too far away. And he started his career as being a celebrated professor in his field. After a short time, he became tenured in his profession, and he was celebrated as being, he graduated the top of his class in Clark. Now he got a great job as being a professor. After a very short time, he was tenured, and he had his whole life set in front of him. And in a way, he even had his spiritual journey set in front of him. He had found Torah Judaism. He was trying to do the best that he can to learn and to grow, as we always say around here, one step at a time. And he was taking one step at a time. He was taking a little more than one step at a time. But for some reason, one step at a time wasn't good enough for him. Where on one hand, he became part of the minyan. There was a small Orthodox minyan in town. And he became friends with an elderly couple, Mr. and Mrs. Nyman. They were one of the shochtim in Chicago. And, with the help of Hashem, he moved around the corner, not too far away from them. And they became the great mentors in his life at the time. So he had found exactly what he needed. He needed a rabbi, he needed a community, and he needed people around him that were going to support his journey toward learning more Torah, to knowing more of what Torah was about, and to really get closer and closer to fulfilling his true mission in life. Now, most people would really feel complacent at this point in life. They have a good job. He had started his family. My older sister was born there. I was born there. And he had started his family. He has a great job. He has job security. His finances are set up. His family is okay. And he's in a great community where he is growing one step at a time, slowly but surely. One day he met Rabbi Nyman's son. Now, Rabbi Nyman's son was a Rebbe in a yeshiva in New York, and he came for the holidays, and he started to get to know Rabbi Nyman's son, because Rabbi Nyman's dad, Mr. Nyman, and his wife, Mrs. Nyman, whenever my father had all these questions, he had more questions than Darren does. So, and actually, I don't know if that's true, but he was constantly asking more and more and more questions like, hey, Rabbi, hey, Mr. Nyman, teach me. And he said, wait until my son comes. Ask him all your questions. I try to do that with Rabbi Meth every once in a while. Any questions you got, go to Rabbi Meth to answer it. But he was searching. I want more, and I want more, and I want more. And that's really what he was consistently trying to do. Rabbi Nyman happened to teach in a yeshiva in New York. So one time when he met Rabbi Nyman, it was Pesach time, I believe. So he said to Rabbi Nyman, what do you think about me coming to study in yeshiva one summer? So here I am, I'm a professor, I'm off during the summer. What do you think about me coming to the yeshiva, for a few weeks one summer to study? I've never studied in a yeshiva. I wonder what that's all about. So Rabbi Nyman said, sure, come, you'll stay in my house. And so little did he know, my parents took him up on it, and they stayed by Rabbi Nyman's house for 6 weeks. That summer, I was actually in my mother's stomach. And he went and he learned in yeshiva, and he loved it. He recognized, this is what I've been looking for my whole life. I've been looking for this truth, this reality, this connection to God. And I have all of this background in academics, and the success in life is not by being a doctor and a lawyer, and it's not by being on the top of the world in the academic fields. Although those things can be used in order to help us serve Hashem when they're used in the proper kind of way. But the true reality is a true closeness to Hashem is really what it's about. And all of that feeling that was bothering him all the years, that there's something more, there's something out there, there's something that I'm missing. And that which I'm missing, it's not going to be fed by another degree. It's not going to be fed by another dissertation. It's not going to be fed by having more and more people in my class when I'm teaching in college. Rather, what it's going to be fulfilled by is really by studying the Torah, by knowing and understanding Hashem's ways in a more meaningful kind of way. And he felt this burning desire. I want to stay. I don't want to go back. The summer's ending. What do I do? I have a job I have to go to. I have no other source of income. I can't just go to yeshiva. So he went back to Rockford for a few months. He had a young child who made a lot of noise. And a few weeks later, he decided, you know what? I think I'm going to take a sabbatical. And I'm going to take off 6 months. I'm going to go study in yeshiva. And you know what? I'll come back to my job. I'll ask them if they're going to hold my job for me. And they committed, we're going to hold your job. You have a tenured position there. And you could come back, after the 6 months of going to study abroad. So his studying abroad started with 6 months and ended 48 years later. Where he went to yeshiva and he sort of got stuck. And he felt like there was some glue there that was keeping him. And his connection to Hashem that he found by studying in the yeshiva was something that kept him for the next 48 years of his life until the day that he passed away. So in a way, when you think about it, he was in a very comfortable kind of position. He had so many things going for him. He had financial security. He had the beginning of a nice family. He had a nice house. We had fruit trees in the backyard. Paula would appreciate them. So we had a nice backyard. We had all kinds of different amenities of a suburban life. He even had the spiritual aspects. He was in a small community. He was part of the minyan, and he was growing. He had a rabbi. He had friends, and there were people who were supporting his journey. But he had this passionate desire. I want more. I know it's okay. I know it could be comfortable staying where I am. I know I could certainly justify continuing to grow at this pace. And it's even something that if you're in the Las Vegas Kollel, we would tell you that, hey, one step at a time. I'm happy you didn't ask me at that time. I would have told them, hey, Dr. Goldman, I don't know if that's the right thing to do. You're maybe biting off more than you can chew. It's probably what I would have told him. And it's probably what Rabbi Meth would have told him as well. That's, hey, you're biting off. Maybe, maybe think about this. He really was going to a new yeshiva. And in this new yeshiva, he had no parnasa. He had no way to make money. He had no real future career there. Here he is. He's like a young kid, back as a professor. He's the guy who everyone turns to. He's the person who, hey, doc, teach me. And here he is. He's going and sitting in a class. He was actually sitting with Rabbi Mendel's father and others who were 20 years younger than him. We're not quite 20 years younger, 15 years younger than him in class. So he went from the teacher to the student. So he's losing all of his honor. He's losing all his financial security. And for what? Things are okay. Things are great. Things are working out. What's missing in your life? What's driving you to give up everything that you have right now in order to enter this new lifestyle? And it seems like, the thing that was really driving him is that he had this sense that I can do more. This is not all that God has in store for me. My neshama, my soul is telling me that I need more. I need to understand more of what this is all about. I am learning one step at a time, and over time, I'm getting more and more clarity about what this is all about. But he had this burning desire, and it wasn't a burning desire for more and more college courses. It wasn't a burning desire for more and more dissertations. Rather, it was a burning desire that I want to get closer to my Creator. It was a burning desire that I want to know more of what my purpose really is about. And when he stepped into that yeshiva and he got a sense of what the true Torah was all about, and he studied this Torah with his great Rebbe at the time, Rabbi Henoch Leibowitz, together with other great Rebbeim in the yeshiva at the time, he had this sense of, this is what I've been looking for my whole life. When I've been upset when I'm selling shoes because my degree is not doing it for me, and he didn't really know what he was looking for, he finally found, this is home. This is what I'm going to look for. This is what I've been looking for. But how did he do it? How do you walk into such a situation where you don't have the financial security? You don't really have a game plan. You don't really know, like, how am I going to live? How am I going to survive? So first of all, it came with a certain conviction that this is what I want to do, and I'm going to figure it out, and Hashem is going to help me. It turns out through some, small nisim that we sort of get used to in our lives, small miracles. At times we refer to it as, I got really lucky, but Mike would tell us, luck is really the hand of God, right, Mike? So that's really what it's true. It's better to be lucky than good, but it's even better to have Hashem's hand in our lives than it is to be able to have other means of success. And through a number of different means, like he had a way where he could figure out that he had a plan to take care of himself financially. And he walked into this yeshiva. Now, most people who would walk into this yeshiva with all the degrees, that they have, most of what you would hear from them is, hello, my name is Dr. Goldman. By the way, I was the first person accepted early admissions into Harvard, and you should read my PhD paper. It's got letters that it has words that are longer than a whole page on it. And by the way, you should try to recognize these are all of my accomplishments. And who are you? Oh, you learn in yeshiva and you're 18 years old. That would be one kind of approach. And that would probably be what I would do, certainly, is I would make sure that everyone sees my resume before I sit in this class. Yet at the same time, I've heard from so many of the students who are part of those classes that he came in as though he was a young child, ready to learn. Teach me. We learn in Pirkei Avos, Ezeu chacham alomid mikol adam, that who is a truly wise person? It doesn't say the guy who has the most PhDs. It says, who's truly a wise person? He who recognizes that there's so much that there is to learn from. I was speaking to one of my Rebbeim, Rabbi Semmel, and he reflected about my dad, this concept. He was saying that he didn't come in with a chip on his shoulder. Rather, he came in with an openness to learn. He came in where no one knew about his resume. No one knew what he had accomplished. Maybe people heard rumors, but it certainly wasn't from him. And he came in and he recognized, what? These people know a lot more about what's truly important than I do. I'm someone who I'm relatively ignorant about all of these things that these people seem to know so much about everything. And that's really the way that he lived his life. He lived his life walking into this new yeshiva with the recognition that about the things that are truly important, I don't really know them yet. And I have a burning desire to learn them as quickly as I can and as well as I can. And I want to incorporate all the lessons into my life as much as I possibly can. So that began his life in yeshiva. We all know the great story of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, he's 40 years old and he was relatively ignorant about Torah. And once he started his path, he started it with passion and with persistence. And he learned day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. And before long, Rabbi Akiva became a great Talmid Chacham, a very, very, very wise person who was now someone that everyone turned to for direction and for understanding about what the Torah is all about. Now, he started way behind the 8 ball. He started out, he was 40 years old. Imagine how much Torah people could have learned, from the time that they were young until they were at that age. And he started way behind all of the great Torah scholars. But with a day in, day out dedication, I'm going to learn, I'm going to grow, I'm not going to rest based on my previous accomplishments. I want to learn. I have this passionate desire in order to learn more and more and more. So my dad represents Rabbi Akiva almost as well as anyone who I know, where he was determined. He came in for one day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year. Then he started with the next day, the next week, the next month, the next year. And again, year in and year out. After time, you get to know something. And after time, even among his peers, he started to become someone who was well respected as a tremendous Talmud Chacham. One of the biggest challenges that we often have in life is that we often sell ourselves too short. We feel like, what could I do? What could I accomplish? And we have all kinds of reasons why we can truly be convinced of the amount that we cannot accomplish. And we have all kinds of justifications that we can convince ourselves of, others convince ourselves of it. Like, come on, this is not for you. This is not for you. Like, this is for those guys. This is for other people. You have a good excuse. You have a good reason. And there are so many good excuses and good reasons. And sometimes the road is very, very difficult. But when you have that passion, you have that determination, and you have that consistent dedication, I want to grow, I want to learn, I want to get better. And you do it day in, day out, every week, every month, every year. Before you know it, you look down in the mountain and it's scary. I'm afraid of heights. So sometimes, if someone like me, you don't want to look back and see how much you've grown and how much you've learned. But it's really such a great lesson, to don't say I can't, say I can, and I'm not sure how. And maybe sometimes we should say, I can do this, and I want to do it, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do whatever I can to make it happen. And when we have that kind of mindset, it's amazing what we can accomplish. In a way, the Mesilas Yesharim, the great path of personal development, of developing ourselves to being the best person that we could be, to being the person who gets as close to Hashem as possible. He tells us that there are really two parts to the path of personal development. There's knowing the simple truth and believing it with our whole heart, and there's understanding the complexity of personal development at the same time, where in a way he tells us so many of the basic ideas, knowing that Hashem created the world, knowing that we owe Hashem every ounce of our energy, knowing that our job in life is really to be the best person that we can be, to be as nice and as kind and as friendly and as honest and as sincere as we can be. So we know that these are our goals in life, and to know that this is the source of our true success, but having it really, really, really clear that nothing else really matters. All of the honor and all of the pleasure and all of the comforts, they're only here to facilitate our spiritual growth. To know the basic foundations with true clarity is one of the motivations, and it's one of the motors toward true personal growth. The other motor to true personal growth has to come with a true and deep understanding of what life is really about. And my father certainly personified both elements of it. He had both motors. He had the understanding of what's really true and what's really real and what's really important in life. His understanding of Machavasa B'Olamo, what the world is really all about. He had a very, very, very clear picture of what that was about. And that fueled so much of his behavior. But he also had a very sophisticated understanding of all the complexities of life as well, which is also something that is very necessary and very helpful for our true success in life. When you think about the way that he ran his life, you could really go through so many different areas. And obviously, we don't really have time to go through each of the different areas of how he incorporated this into his life. So when Boaz spoke to Rus, the great Rus, who made a big, huge change in her life. She went from being the princess of Moab, the country, one of the countries that really personified the opposite of moral achievements. And she gave up all of the riches and all of the power. She went from being the princess to the pauper in order to make sure that she joined the Jewish nation. And on one hand, the big decisions that we have in life are really what personifies our true greatness. But at the same time, she was known for being nice to her mother-in-law. And this is how Boaz described, Rus, what makes you amazing? You could do the big things and you could do the little things on a daily basis. All the different daily interactions, how you treat other people, how you go through your life. Those are also what really personifies your true greatness. So on one hand, you think about my father's path toward Torah Judaism, his path to becoming a tremendous Talmud Chacham, could be looked at as one of the big decisions, that he made in his life to really give up so much of the fame, give up so much of the, the financial security and many of the different comforts that he had in order to dedicate his life toward learning Torah, to studying Torah, and to teaching Torah, and to helping other people. But really, when you got to know him, maybe what personified his true accomplishments was really all the daily interactions that you would have with him. When you saw the way that he davened, when he prayed to God, he prayed as though you can tell like he was talking to someone who he knew was listening to him intently. When his prayers, were being said, they were said in a very quiet and unassuming kind of way, but you knew he was busy with a very, very important meeting. When you talked to him about almost anything, you saw his bitachon in Hashem, his trust in Hashem. You saw his recognition about what was important in life. You saw what was not important in life. You saw his daily hard work where he put in every day. You could sort of, plug the car in, where he went, 2 miles every day in each direction. He woke up in the morning, went to yeshiva. At the end of the day, he came back from yeshiva. The next day, the car probably could have driven itself, so many times. And, it just every day, day in, day out, he had this clarity about what life was about and what was really important. One of the things that certainly stood out was, his relationship with his parents. It was legendary. One of the things that stood out was every third weekend, every third Shabbos, my family packed into our car and we drove over to New Jersey. Now, driving over to New Jersey when my grandparents, they didn't really keep kosher so much. So it meant that all of the Shabbos food was cooked beforehand. And it was all packed into this little red box. And we all packed into the van and we schlepped across the Holland Tunnel, the Lincoln Tunnel, the George Washington Bridge. And I can tell you, we heard, the music of all the cars around us, throughout our trip. But every third week, we went to New Jersey. We stayed in this 2-bedroom apartment. They had moved from their house as they got older. The 10 of us, together with our 2 grandparents. And this is what we did every third weekend. And we loved it because that was who my dad was. That's who my mom is. They are the kind of people who knew that my grandparents cherished every moment that we were with them. And like, it wasn't a thing. It didn't seem like a big deal to us. It was something we loved. It's something we looked forward to. The physical comforts weren't really what was important. The relationships in their lives was actually what was important to them. The family, the dedication to the family, the dedication to being there for their parents was what was really so important. The fact that my grandparents were loving and kind and so special certainly made it easier. But the fact that my mom was extremely allergic to their cat and she was sneezing the entire weekend did not make it easier. Yet at the same time, this is what we did because that's what you do for your parents. That's what you do for family. I don't remember my dad speaking Lashon Hara. We talk a lot about that around here. You talk about how almost every conversation that we have to be so super careful about not saying something negative about our friends. I'm sure that he did because it's almost impossible not to. But certainly when anything came up at the Shabbos table that had any hint that it was referencing someone else in somewhat of a negative kind of way, the conversation very quickly changed. And that's how I grew up, that was sort of what was standard. That was the given. Talking in a negative way about other people, it just wasn't part of the way that he was. It wasn't something that he did. And it was something that certainly was such a great role model for the rest of us. Shalom was certainly his number one priority. He dedicated his life to helping people get along with each other. And it made him so happy when he was able to help others get along as a psychologist, as a rabbi, as someone who was involved helping other people in their lives. He was someone who spent so much of his life. You know what he did when he came home from yeshiva, which was often pretty late at night. So he ate a short little supper and he was on the phone. He was on the phone helping people. When he had a little break during the summer, when he had a break Friday afternoon, he was on the phone. Being home, what that really meant was he was on the phone. Taking a rest meant he was lying down on the phone. That was my dad's life. His life was for other people. His life was to facilitate other people's comfort, to facilitate other people's happiness. And a lot of us here, we had him as a Rebbe, when we were in yeshiva. And I've heard from so many of his students that his greatest accomplishment was not when he told someone, I have a new brilliant insight in Torah. Rather, his focus that I heard from so many people was helping other people have their own brilliant insights in Torah. And he spent days and weeks really trying to work with people, helping them get clarity in what the Torah was all about. And when they came up with something that really fit into the truth of the Torah, it was something that certainly made them happy, but it was also certainly something that was his goal and his mission. We can certainly go on, but maybe just to mention a couple other things. We're taught Torah Mevili Des Zehiros, that when you study Torah, when you learn the Torah, it makes us into a better and better person. This was something that was certainly personified in his life. When you talk about being a growing person, being someone who becomes a better and better person, a lot of that has to do with self-reflection. And it's so easy. Once someone reaches a certain level of spiritual accomplishment, it's easy to plateau. It's easy to feel like, you know what, I've made it. I don't have to work so hard. You know what, this guy has to work so hard, and let me help him, become a better and better person. And it's certainly such an important thing that we need to do, is to help others become better people. But even when we've reached a level of spiritual accomplishment that is very significant, one of my rabbis used to say, Rabbi Dr. Alav Shalom, used to say that any day we wake up and open our eyes, it means God's telling us we're not perfect yet. Because if we were perfect and we fulfilled our mission, there'd be no reason to get up the next day. Hashem created us every day, gives us life, because he's giving us a mission of improving ourselves. This is something I saw so clearly in my father's life. Very often, when you talk about someone being an amazing person, when you ask their family how amazing they are, they're like, well, if you really get to know him on a daily basis, you don't necessarily only see the great things about them. My dad was someone, the more you got to know him, the more special that you saw that he was. And a big part of this was because he never plateaued. He was the kind of person who was always working on himself. And I can tell you, I saw him get better and better and better in so many of his midos. And he was always really special. But the amount of specialness that he was at a younger age, he kept on becoming a better and better person. A Musar Sefer was something that was very often in his hands. And when he learned Musar, when he learned about becoming a better person, these weren't just intellectual ideas, these were realities. You would hear it in his speech and you would see it in his action. You would see that when he learned something new, it meant something to him, and he changed his life based on these new lessons. Certainly, we hear a lot of amazing speeches, and we even repeat so many of them over. I heard this great speech, and it was really so interesting and so meaningful. And what did you do about it? Well, I heard another good speech. That's certainly the way that we often are. But to take the messages that we learn and to really make it a part of our life, that's really what Torah Mevili Des Zehiros is all about. It's not about hearing great motivational speeches alone. It's by taking what we learn and making it real. His relationship with God was very real. You can sense it. You can feel it. You can hear it when you speak to him. There's a Gemara in Yuma that we love to quote. Every once in a while, my son Shlomi refers to it, where it says in the Gemara that it says, if you want to know a true Talmid Chacham and what he's really about, look at his actions. Look at how much of a mensch the person is. Someone who studies Torah properly is someone who takes the Torah that he learns and he incorporates it into his life, where he becomes more and more of a mensch. He becomes a nicer and kinder and sweeter person. He has more integrity, he has more humility. He has better and better midos every day, because that's what the Torah teaches us about. When we study together in the kollel, when we study on our own, and we see so many of the great messages of the Torah transforms us into becoming a better and better person. And when we are being transformed daily and weekly and monthly on a consistent basis to becoming a better and better person, we almost don't recognize that person in the mirror that's looking back at us. We can see like, hey, I became a better person. I became a nicer person. And you know what? It's so much connected to the Torah that I'm studying and to how I'm incorporating that Torah into my life. One of the biggest things that he did, and it certainly would take much too long to really discuss it, was his whole approach toward helping other people, where he spent so much of his life, other than studying the Torah, other than teaching the Torah, so much of what he was known for was all of the personal conversations that he had on a consistent basis over the days, weeks, months, years, and decades with so many students. The amount of families that he's helped, are impossible to imagine, impossible to count. There are so many people who he interacted with that he made a very meaningful difference in their lives. But how did he do it? What was the secret? And what was the path and approach that he used in order to be able to help other people? So it's certainly something that the more that you study it, the more that you can learn from it. And it's certainly something that hopefully at some later date, I would love to study it on my own and certainly to study it together with other people. But some of the just things on the surface that stand out about his approach toward helping people. There are a lot of psychologists in the world. There are a lot of rabbis in the world. There are a lot of people who understand in general what's right in life. There are a lot of people who understand people. But there are very few people who can combine a true understanding of what life's about, true and sophisticated understanding of Torah perspectives on understanding the human being and his job and his purpose in this world, who can have a sophisticated understanding of how to integrate, Torah values and Torah ideals, into the daily lives of humanity. And he also had a sophisticated understanding of how a human being works, based on all of his training from the secular world. So he brought together his knowledge that came from different places. And most importantly, he himself being a great role model for all the people he's speaking to. Imagine if you have, a therapist, a leader, who he himself is not necessarily a mensch, and he's trying to help us understand how we should speak to our wives in a gentle and kind and sensitive kind of way. Imagine someone himself who's not compassionate and loving and caring about other people, trying to guide other people to being great parents who are loving, kind, and understanding of their children. So with this kind of character that he brought into every conversation, he was able to not only be the best role model, but he was able to share the messages that were actually helpful to others. If you're able to be that role model and understand that the true relationship with your children, the true relationship with your spouse, the true relationship with your neighbors is really based on your own personal growth. It's based on your own personal closeness to God, your own personal character, then you're able to really help other people become the best parent, the best friend, the best neighbor, and the best business partner. So he brought such a different picture into every relationship that he was trying to guide others in. So again, there's a lot to study, there's a lot to share. And, I wanted to just create a little bit of a picture of who my father was. The most important thing is not really just to think of him and give him honor and respect for who he was. That's certainly an important thing to do. But the best honor is really for us to really live through his legacy, to really try to think of what we can be like ourselves if we really believe in ourselves. Every time that we tell ourselves, I can't, we tell ourselves, I can. Every time that we're telling ourselves, I can't, and we tell ourselves, really, I can, the real question is how? How is it going to work? And when we think about the fact that Hashem is on our side, if we really want to succeed, we really want to get closer to God, isn't Hashem going to help us in this process? Isn't Hashem going to help us get closer and closer to Hashem? So many times when we sell ourselves short, but it's not for me, I can't do this, I'm not special enough, God doesn't want me to be able to accomplish these goals. Let's look to my father's life. And really, he's not the only person. There's so many people who have also accomplished such amazing things. We could even look at ourselves and look at all the accomplishments we've already had. And really to get that chizuk, to get that strength, and to get that picture in our lives. I can be better. I need to be better. I need to not be complacent. I need to keep on growing and be the best person I can be. And even if I tell myself, I'm already a frum Jew, I'm already a Torah observant Jew, that's a good step in the process. I need to become better and better and better in all the areas of my life. So his life was the Kiddush Hashem. He inspired and helped so many people. His memory should certainly be a blessing. His actions should really stand up and be a zchus and a merit for my mother, for my family, and for all of us. I hope to do my best to continue to learn and be inspired from his life and his teachings. It's a great responsibility that Hashem has given to all of us who have had the opportunity to learn from him and to be inspired from him and to grow from him. I hope to find a way to continue to share many of his teachings with others, because when you see greatness in your life and you see someone who had such great messages and was such a great inspiration and such a great role model, it comes together with a great responsibility to share what you've seen with other people. So I look forward to trying to do my best in order to continue to share his teachings with other people. Maybe over time we'll figure out how to make sure that we find such opportunities. And there's so many areas to continue to grow. Thank you again, everyone, for coming. My father's memory should be a blessing. Everyone who came, it's a real chizuk to me, because many of you came as friends or as people who are honoring my dad. Both of them are inspiring to me. I appreciate both of them. Everyone in this room and everyone who's listening, you're all very dear to my heart and to the heart of my family. And thank you, everyone, for coming.